Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And for some reason I feel like I want to giggle, and it's because I'm actually interviewing my best friend today. So say hello, Alecia.
Hi everyone. You are super giggly, Polly.
And I don't know, it just suddenly felt weird doing that preamble when you're sat there in front of me. It's sort of, because it's you, it almost sort of feels more real. That's weird and strange. um, so some of you may recognise Alecia from the Sky One series, The Heist, which at the time of recording, the first episode went out last night, so it's all very exciting. But Alecia and I have actually been friends since we were 15 years old. So there's lots of stories which Alicia's not going to tell in this video, but I'm going to do my usual of getting out of the way and letting Alecia tell her story, because these are sort of little known facts that you probably don't know about her. So I'm going to let her just dive in. Off you go.
Okay, so friends for a long time, Polly. And yeah, you do know a lot more about me than everybody else does. Probably including family members. And if anyone is watching that wants to know any little known facts about Polly, just direct message me.
Don't.
We grew up in the Cotswolds, very quiet, sleepy area compared to living in a city or a busier area. There's not an awful lot to do, and there's not really a diverse background of people in the Cotswolds.
No.
There was one police officer that lived in our town. There was one takeaway restaurant. Not an awful lot going on. You had to get a bus 25 miles to go into the nearest town to go shopping. So that was always an epic trip. Obviously, at the age that we started driving, we went on many, many adventures, and that's part of what led me to where I am now, because then going into my 20s and having to take responsibility for becoming a parent at 23, all of those mini adventures go out of the window. And then you get a little bit older and realise that you miss those mini adventures, so you start them all over again in your 30s, which is exactly what I've done.
Excellent. Very exciting. I know about a lot of your mini adventures, not least that you said about being having your first child at 23. That was as a result of your adventure of living in Tenerife, but that's a whole different story. So tell us a bit more about life growing up, because like you say, we did grow up in the sleepy Cotswolds, and you went to the wonderful, was it called Boughton Vale when you started at the Cotswold School, or was it called the Cotswold School? I can't remember.
My mum actually went to Boughton Vale, and my uncle, but it was the Cotswold School when I started. It's still the Cotswold School now in Boughton on the Water. Very good reputation now. It had a great reputation when I was there, but I think that's partly due to the fact that there was nowhere else to go to school. It was too far to go anywhere else. So yeah, at the Cotswold School, school wasn't easy for me. I wasn't particularly academic at the time, but then I think that that's because I didn't have a champion. I'm from a single parent family. My dad walked out when I was 4. My mum worked about 3 full-time jobs, so my grandparents more or less raised me. I didn't have any other family nearby. My mum did a great job with the resources that she had. She owned her own home. She worked really hard. But as a result of her making those choices for us, and sending us to a nice primary school and getting all the things for us that she would want us to have, and working really hard for those things, we didn't see a lot of her. Which in hindsight, I don't know whether that was the right thing or not, but she did her very best, and that's what counts, because she loves us. However, growing up through that process, I would say that leads to a small degree of psychological damage as an adult, because there is a lack of parenting to a degree. My sister and I very much brought ourselves up. Right. I'm incredibly close to my sister. there was an element of emotional and physical abuse in my childhood growing up, which I won't bore people with, but I'm happy to talk about it, you know, another time. But those kind of things did happen, and they shape your future. They shape the way that you deal with that subject matter as an adult. They either knock you down or they make you more resilient. And so I guess as a child, I was very meek and mild. I found myself being a victim quite a lot, and that would be a victim of circumstance to a degree. If people were rude or mean to me, I wasn't the kind of child that would answer back. I was really quiet, really sweet, well behaved, because I was too terrified not to be. So by the time I'd started school, and I'd been to a different primary school to everyone else, where there was only 32 kids in my entire primary school, I just didn't have much of I wasn't outgoing. I didn't have much of a personality. I found it really daunting to go from school that had 32 kids in it to a school of over 800, where lots of people knew each other. I didn't have any other relatives in the school. I didn't know many other kids. So it was hard fitting in. I didn't know who I was really. So I struggled. I was bullied throughout school by a large group of girls that were older than me, to the point where I was too terrified to go on the bus. For the first 2 years of school, my mum had to drive me, or I would go in late to school and catch the local bus into school. And I was too scared to stick up for myself. And looking back, that's one of my regrets. One of my regrets is that I didn't have the power within me to say this is not okay.
Right. I don't think you're going to be alone with that, though, Han. You know, so I mean, bullying is a lot more. We talk about it a lot more now. You know, we try and empower our children to speak up and that kind of thing. But it still happens. It still happens a lot. And you can't be. I'm talking as your best friend. I don't want you to feel regret, because at the time you were only a little girl, you know, and like you say, you hadn't had those life experiences. The stepping up bit comes later, doesn't it? Because this experience is what has made you the person you are today. You know, you're a lot more resilient today, but you are who you are today because of what you went through as a kid, what you experienced. And so you weren't, at that point in time, you weren't ready, but I feel like having that experience has given you a lot more empathy towards other people that are going through similar situations, you know, because nobody wants, I think when you've been hurt badly, you kind of either go one of two ways, but I personally have found that people who've been hurt badly either lash out, or they never want anyone to feel as bad as they've felt before. So, you know, having that experience as a young child, you weren't ready to fight back at that point in time, but you absorbed the lesson, if you like, that is not a cool way of acting, and that's not a nice thing to do to people. So sorry, I've taken over.
No, you're bang on. I think it left me feeling, you've hit the nail on the head. You do go one way or the other, and actually it's probably made me into a nicer person. I mean, looking at me, people don't always assume that I'm nice, because I do the best RBF in the world. I don't want to swear, so I won't say the B word, but you know, people presume I am a certain way because of the way that I look. But actually, I'd like to think I am a really nice person. I am a good person, and part of what's led me there is the fact that I hate people suffering. I hate animals suffering. I hate the planet suffering. I could go on for ages about all of those things, but I don't ever want anyone to feel the way that those people made me feel. And I guess I grasped onto the fact that as an adult, I would never let it happen to me. Sadly, it did again. I've been bullied again as an adult, even recently. It does still continue to happen, because there are people that are nasty, and actually there are people that bully people and don't realise they're even doing it. And also that if I could help other people feel better about the situation and try and climb out of it to save their mental health, then great. So, and if it, in a selfish way, I do it because it makes me feel better about myself, the fact that I can be nice to people, which costs nothing, and it makes you feel good about yourself too. So it thanks Bullies for being so bloody awful to me that you've made me a better person. However, there are a couple I can honestly say, if I did see them in the street, I would quite like to slap them still. Not that I would, but I'm not condoning violence, but yeah, that's there's still a little, I harbour a little bit of resentment towards a few of them, but yeah.
Oh, sure. And that's only natural anyway, isn't it? But I know that, like you say, you wouldn't actually go and slap them, but you know, it would yeah, it's one of those things. It's only natural to sort of hold a little bit of resentment to a degree. So anyway, yeah, let's get back to your story. So you were bullied at school, and we've already established that really that has made you a more empathetic person. But like you say, these things happen all the time, and because of the way you look, you know, I would say Angelina Jolie-esque, and even maybe a little bit J-Lo-esque. And growing up, I just want to say this, viewers, growing up, I was the podgy blonde bird stood next to a skinny, beautiful, long-haired, dark, beautiful girl, and Alecia used to get all the guys. I never did.
That's not entirely true. I'm only 5'2" and I've got the biggest arse ever, and that's why she compares me to J-Lo.
Yeah, well, it's true. Out there, it's true. So anyway, getting back to your story, you actually, just what I'm going to put out there is Alecia is one of the most tenacious people I know. If she gets a bee in a bonnet about something, she decides she's going to do it, she damn well does it, and I have always admired that in her. We're going to talk a little bit later on about other projects that are going on that she's tenacious about, but right, I remember you joining the police force and going at it hammer and tongs. You had your son at that point in time, and you'd also actually, no, I'm going to get this wrong. Had you finished with your first husband by then, or?
Yeah, so I'll skirt over it, but I moved. I came out of a really bad relationship. I moved over to Tenerife for 2 years and got my diving qualifications. Had a great time out there. It wasn't not a great time in the stereotypical partying. I had a good time working really hard. My first love, obviously apart from my children and everything, is the ocean. So that's where I was every day. Or a mountain, which is also kind of my second love. I did that for 2 years and came back with a fiance and a baby in my belly, which my family thought was absolutely horrific because I was 23 at the time. But I have the most incredible 13-year-old, almost 14-year-old son who I'm so proud of every day as a result of that, and that's only a good thing. I did marry his dad. It didn't work out, but we are the best of friends. We have a great relationship. So that was husband number one, over and done with. Hi, Travis, if you're watching. And whilst we were still together, I applied to be a police officer. We had back from Tenerife. We were living within the Avon and Somerset jurisdiction. So I applied. Ethan, my son, was only a few months old at the time. I knew the process would be a long one, and the fitness journey would be a long one after a really horrific birth. I suffered postnatal depression with Ethan as well, which was pretty bad in moments. So I had to take myself through that journey whilst also considering the career that I wanted. So the application process actually took 2.5 years. I believe it's a lot quicker than that now. And during that time, my husband and I divorced and went our separate ways. So I started the police force, Avon and Somerset Police, in 2008, in March 31st, 2008, as a single mum in my late 20s. And yeah. It was a bizarre situation to be in, where I was undertaking this new role that I'd kind of not. I had two aspirations really, either to join the army or to join the police. And the army was not going to work out for me because, well, for various reasons I won't go into. But so I joined the police, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. So there I was successful, I got in, but I'd never planned to do that as a single parent working full-time shifts. I also had to work in a pub part-time as well, because as a single parent you have financial commitments that you can't run away from.
Sure.
And childcare was expensive, because I was at training school full-time, and I was the only one out of my group to be commuting every day instead of staying on board. So I had a lot of commitments compared to everyone else, and it was hard, but I got through training school. And on the day of my pass out, my then 3.5-year-old, as you know, became very ill, and 2 days later he was in intensive care.
Yeah.
So I started on district about 2 months later than I should have done, having almost lost my son to encephalitis. That was a really bizarre time, because I then also ended the relationship that I was in, which was an incredibly abusive relationship that I didn't deal with particularly well, considering what the job that I was going into and the job I was training for. It was physically and emotionally abusive, and I shouldn't have been in it. So nearly losing my child made me take stock of my life. I built on my relationship with my ex-husband to make it a strong enough foundation for us to raise our son together separately. I valued my friendships more, and obviously valued my relationship with my son a lot more. And I, that was the first big turning point in my life, I think, where I thought, I'm going to have to paddle my own canoe here. It's just me and my son, and I'm lucky to have him. We did nearly lose him. It was hard living in Bristol Children's Hospital for a couple of months, but hey, here we are. He's great, and he survived. I survived, and I started on district a couple of months later than I should have done, and that's that.
Cool.
So as you know about me, I don't know how, I just I said I wasn't going to swear, but I'm going to now. I'm a shit stick. I don't know why, but I just seem to attract shit everywhere I go and whatever I do. I'm one of those people that absorbs. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is. The universe has it in for me, but not that I mind, because it shapes me. But bad things happen. If you believe in voodoo, stay away from me, because these things do happen, and they just don't seem to go. I just keep rolling with the punches.
You do seem to have had your unfair share of very trying and testing circumstances, and having been your friend since we were 15, one of the things that I say to you more than often now, when a new thing rolls in for you to deal with, is, oh honey, you've dealt with worse than this, so you're strong. You'll get through this, you can. But yeah, so there has been a string of stuff that you've had to deal with, but you deal with it, you've come through, and you've come through stronger. And I want you to talk a bit more about your time in the police, but I am super excited about the heist as well. So I will hand back over to you and stop talking.
I was with Avon Somerset Constabulary for 10 years. Predominantly my role was as a police constable. So you go through probation, your 2-year probationary period, which includes the training school, which was 6 months at the time. But I think, I can look back on it as being just generally incredibly grateful for the opportunity. The crisis in policing at the moment, and the thin blue line, is horrific. And I was in a really good time where they were still recruiting really well. There was none of this, you must have a degree in order to be able to get into the police. I literally had 5 GCSEs. I left school so I could work. Didn't turn up for half my exams. So I'd have been screwed. I wouldn't have been able to get in. On paper, I'm not employable, but I know that I'm a good employee in terms of using my mind. So I loved my job. There is not one element of my job that I thought, oh God, this is gross. You know, you'd make a joke if you were standing, you know, on a cordon or at a road traffic collision for hours on end, getting soaked right through to your pants, or you know, just a sudden death with a really gruesome body that you would find. But none of it fazed me. I've got a really strong constitution. Not a lot phases me. I deal incredibly well under pressure. I don't crumble. I don't panic. I've always been good at remaining professional when I need to. I know my strong points. So as far as I'm concerned, I was a good police officer and I loved my job. But there are always downsides. And I think if we were all honest about it, you'd never work a day in your life if you do a job that you love. I've heard that time and time again. But not all of us have got the opportunity to be within that position. I did a job that I loved, but what I didn't love was the bureaucracy and the red tape behind it, because it has the ability to turn people into not very nice people.
Sure.
And I will say that the majority of police officers, the ones that I worked with and the ones spread across the country, are incredible people. They're brave, they're hardworking, they're honourable, they're honest, they're trustworthy, and they will have your back. That I'm still part of that police family. I've still got friends that I worked with and friends that I made, and they are incredible people who risk their lives and give up their lives in order to make other people's lives better. I was part of that. I left my son at home with whoever I could. Sometimes I didn't know who would be looking after my kids 2 days in advance of the night shift.
Right.
And that was really, really hard. But I did it, not because it was paying the bills, because I could have got any job to pay the bills. I did it because I loved my job. I loved putting that uniform on. I loved the fact that I worked for the Queen. As you know, I'm a staunch royalist. So I loved it. I really did. There was just elements of it that I really didn't love, and that was that there's money being taken away from policing and put in other areas where it doesn't need to be. You don't need to print on glossy paper in order to be able to read the text. That, you know, you don't need to see a clean police car, save the soap suds, and pay money towards the officers on the front line. You know, I could go on for days about this, and anyone watching this who's aware of the crisis in policing and what's currently going on in London, for example, with regards to the level of knife crime, there aren't enough officers on the streets. The officers that are working are absolutely swamped with so many crimes that they have to investigate, but every day that they're turning up for work, they never get to sit down and investigate those crimes because they're getting sent out after job after job after job. Right. Jumping over red tape to save lives, you know, dealing with you must call your victims this many times a week, but some of those victims don't even, you know, don't it's going to sound controversial, I don't deserve to be victims, because it will be a position that they've put themselves in due to drug use, due to putting themselves in danger in order to get attention from the police.
Right.
So while the police are spending time dealing with the people that don't need to be dealt with, there is so much else going on that they never get to deal with.
Right.
Yeah. Heartbreaking. I've kind of gone off on a tangent now, but I feel really passionately about the crisis in policing and the thin blue line. It's awful, and that's part of the reason why I'm not serving anymore.
Right. Because that line's getting so much thinner. I mean, I'm feeling your passion about it, because as buddies, we don't actually talk about work very often, but no, it's really resonating what you're saying. Tell me more about, because like you've already said that you aren't policing anymore, but I know that it's not 100% to do with the reasons that you've just given. I know that policing was hard for those, like you say, it's heartbreaking when you love and you're so passionate about something, but you can see where things are going down the drain a bit. Tell me what I would consider to be one of the probably the main reason why you've had to leave the police force.
So the thing that I struggled with mostly, I guess, is my mental health and being for all intents and purposes, a single parent. I did remarry, as you know, in 2012. I remarried a Royal Marine. He was constantly deployed. He was in Afghanistan during the beginning of our relationship. He was moved to Scotland. He was doing other work that involved him being out of the country in the jungle, where I had no contact for several months. Out of the majority of our relationship, I'd say we've probably spent a quarter of it together. So he wasn't around, and I couldn't rely on him for childcare for my first son, who he's been parenting since, co-parenting along with my husband and his current wife for a number of years. I couldn't rely on him for that. And we've also subsequently had, first of all, another child when I was still working, who I was still essentially left as a single parent with. But I was then single parenting at the time 2 children and trying to work. And at the same time, I was dealing with what I now know to be a husband who has severe complex PTSD, and whose behaviour isn't always the best behaviour in terms of being able to try and rub along smoothly when I was tired from shift work, or when I didn't know where the next set of childcare was going to be coming from. You know, the pressures of life get in the way, and it's difficult enough to manage your own life and your own stress without then managing a job that brings a lot of stress, children, and a partner that's never there. And when they are there, they aren't, not that I want to put him down, because he struggles, and his struggle is real. A partner that doesn't always behave in the way that you need them to be behaving, and they can't see that. So on top of I would say that I brought these issues into work. That's difficult for any employer, because you need to be able to rely on that line number. You need to know that they're coming into work, that they're showing up, that they're getting on with their job, and they're being professional. And a lot of the time, I couldn't guarantee my employer that, because I'd have a child be ill. For example, I turn up to work. One perfect example is I drove all the way into work, which was an hour commute after I'd moved away. And I would have to leave my eldest 2 mornings a week when I was on early shifts to take himself out of the house. My neighbour used to make sure he got to school for me, but he was 10 years old at the time, and he was having to be a latchkey kid at 10. The primary school was only over the road from the house. I wasn't neglecting, but he would have to take himself out of the house. He'd be in the house for half an hour on his own, and then as my neighbour walked past, she'd knock on the door and make sure he was coming out and going to school. I got all the way into work, and I literally walked in the back door of the police station. He rang me and said, "Mum, I'm really sorry. I've just been sick all over the stairs." So I literally walked into the office and I said, "Guys, I'm really sorry. I've just got here and I'm going to have to go again." Now, that particular day, I knew that I had about 3 victim statements to take. I had to make inquiries in town. I was a patrol officer at the town centre at that time. People relying on me to do stuff. I had about 13 crimes in my in tray. I had meetings. It was a 10-hour day as per normal. And I just had to go back out the door again. Now, that has a huge knock-on effect for your colleagues, because it puts them under pressure when they have to take up the slack of your work. But I couldn't change my situation. I couldn't make my husband come home. I couldn't, when my husband was at home, make him more responsible. I couldn't magic my children away, or magic family members nearby to be there. My mum still works full time at the age of 71, so I couldn't change my situation, and therefore I constantly felt responsible, stressed, drained. On average, I've got insomnia anyway, but on average I was averaging about, I think, 3.5 hours sleep at the time. Sleep hygiene has a huge effect on us and our mental health, especially if you're a shift worker. I was still doing night shifts throughout the majority of my career. I applied to go part-time, and they didn't make that particularly easy. Again, I can understand why, because really you're taking up a whole job, you're only turning up for half of it. They can't replace you with another part-time person. So I completely get it, why it's difficult for the employer. But as an employee, surely you're of value somewhere. And I know I was a good police officer, but I do feel that I was incredibly unsupported in being a single parent and still trying my best to rock up, even though day after day after day my mental health was suffering more and more and more. And because of that, and because of some difficulty, I guess, fitting in when I first started, especially in a small town where everybody knows everyone. They either went to school with somebody, they're married to somebody else in the job, they're related to somebody, or if you're single, for all intents and purposes, people ask you out, you say no, then they think you're a miserable bugger, so they, you kind of cast aside a little bit. And I didn't fit in. I really didn't, and it was so difficult. I did keep myself to myself a lot. I was bullied by some colleagues who were quite influential, and therefore other people, just if they said that I wasn't a great person, then they were telling other people, and other people therefore then didn't like me or didn't want to trust me, and that has a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
So I kind of carved my own way. I have got, like I said, I've got some great friends who are ex-colleagues, and I'm still in touch with them, and they were really good to me. My very first inspector had faith in me. He still does, and I love him for that. He was a great inspector. He could have gone far in the police force, but he's retired now as an inspector, and he's still as marvellous now as he was then. And I had some great colleagues, but there were just a few people that made my life so difficult that it really, really impacted on my mental health, to the point where I had a full breakdown in October 2011. And as a result, I was off work for 4.5 months, medicated. I had to have counselling. Went back to work for a couple of years, and then I had a relapse and had another really bad bout of mental health. Because of the pressure that I was under as a parent, as a wife of somebody with mental health issues, as a parent of a son who had learning difficulties quite severely because of his encephalitis. I also care for my nan as well on a part-time basis. I share the care with my mum and my sister for my grandmother. So there was a lot of pressure on me, and I guess in terms of stress bucket analogies, I was holding my stress bucket and I was trying to trundle along with it, and people just kept piling things into it. I would also pile things into it, and it was continually overflowing until the whole thing broke.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw it out there that as a family friend, at one particular conversation that we had that really sort of stuck with me was when your husband was away, and you, as you know, anyone who's not a military wife, by the way, what happens is you hardly hear from your husband while they're away, and it's a nightmare, because if you miss a call, you get so upset. It's heartbreaking when you miss a call, but because they're in such an extra, and this is a particular conversation that Alecia and I had, whereas she'd had a really, really, really stressful day and had a lot on her plate. She didn't ring her husband. She finally got to speak to her husband, but he had had a horrific day. And how do you talk to someone when they're in a war zone? You don't offload your own stuff onto them. And I remember just thinking how awful that must have been, that not only had she had a really rubbish day, but he had had a really rubbish day. And I remember you telling me that you didn't feel able to offload onto him because of that. And so for you to be holding your own and holding your own stress and not having that release, and then, like you say, you just talked about a stress bucket, and knowing that you are good in a crisis, that you go into sort of mission mode and you deal with everyone. I think sometimes, there's that saying, isn't there? If you want something doing, ask a busy person. And but if you've got a crisis, ask Alecia, because she'll sort it out for you. But if you've got your own stresses going on and everybody else asking for your help, that bucket's going to burst. And it did. And awful times, but you lived through it, you survived.
And like I said, and I will stress, I loved my job, and the majority of people I work with were fab, and it's given me so much back. You know, there's so many victims. Actually, I've got a really good memory. It annoys the hell out of friends and family. But I remember so many victims. I remember so many successful court cases. I remember so many positive convictions where I've made, me personally, and I know I'm blowing my own trumpet here, but I've personally made a difference to so many people's lives. I've been on the scene at some horrific car accidents, and I've treated people the way that I would want a family member to be treated if they were in that position. You know, and or I've delivered death messages to people and gone out of my way to make sure that everything was as okay as it possibly could be for that person, or dealt with, you know, dead bodies with respect, and the respect that they deserve and that their family deserve. All officers do that, but I'm privileged to have been one of those people, and I'm privileged to know that I've made a difference to some people. And I kind of hope and I guess in a way that some people that watch this have either worked with me or I've dealt with them. I mean, you even strike up a great relationship with some of the people that you regularly arrest. Right. You know, I used to walk through one of the local shops, you know, once a week to go and do my shopping with my children, and they'd be like, all right, miss, all right, miss. You know, you build up a level of respect with these people, and you get a lot back by forming these fantastic relationships with people that in an ordinary life you wouldn't be forming relationships with. That's how you gather intelligence. That's how you make people trust you enough to tell you the information that you need to know in order to do your job really well. And that's part of the job that I was really good at. So I can take those skills with me in life and continue to build on those skills. We're always learning. You know, you're a one for quotes as well, but if you're going through hell, keep going, said Winston Churchill. So I went through hell, I kept going. There's loads of other people out there going through hell. A lot of them keep going too. You know, we can build each other up, we make each other stronger, and I will take everything I learned from that job, continue to build on it, continue to work on it, and utilize it in the future for whatever I end up doing. So all in all, it doesn't matter about the negative relationships I had with people that I worked with or worked for. What matters is all the positive that came out of it.
Sure, exactly. And now let's talk about the biggest positive that you've reutilized those skills for, which I'm hoping that everyone's going to be super excited about watching this. The heist. Tell me about.
Well, it was a bizarre set of circumstances that led me to applying for the program. So, again, one of those things, you know, I said I was a shit stick. So I lost 3 pregnancies within a year. I had 2 miscarriages and then an ectopic pregnancy. So I spent a lot of time in hospital. I was still working throughout the first miscarriage. Then I had some time off. I went into a career break and managed to fall pregnant with my youngest, George, my most feral of my 3 kids. And so time-wise, I guess, in a way, I kind of have to believe in fate a little bit and think that everything happens for a reason. And George is adorable, even though he is feral. He came along at the right time. I ended up not going back to work because my career break turned into maternity leave. I was attempting to negotiate my back to work hours, and I fully intended to go back to work, but the joyful employer that they were just wouldn't budge on hours. I wanted to do night shifts and late shifts and earlies, but they were just saying, nope, you have to do this and that's that, and we will not negotiate. So I kind of just couldn't be bothered to fight them and said, fine, I won't come back. And instead, I will support my husband in his PTSD recovery. So I completely left the area, moved down to Plymouth. He went into full-time rehab and therapy for his PTSD. And I never really planned to be a stay-at-home mum. I'm not, it sounds awful, I've got 3 kids, but I'm not particularly mumsy. I've always enjoyed working, but I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to spend some time with my kids and really get to know them and parent them on a full-time basis, because it's all power to anyone who is a full-time parent. It's killing me. It's the hardest job I've ever done in my life. And it's a job that it sounds awful. It's a job I don't particularly want. I like sending my children to school or to nursery. I would go insane if I couldn't do that 24/7. So I was at home. I was out of work, and I thought, God, I well, you know, what's this old thing called LinkedIn? I better build up a profile and see if I can get some sort of part-time work. I was at a real crossroads, and it was almost like a shining light. There it was, an advert for, you know, are you a detective? Are you a police officer? Have you got any investigative skills? I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I just emailed saying, hey, I'm interested in this. You know, not really thinking I would get anywhere, but they liked me. I went through a process of interviews, Skype interviews, a screen test in London, and I guess just one person in particular, Charlotte, who is a production a producer on the show. She just, I don't know, she had faith in me, and to know that there was just, she was like a beacon of light in what was again another dark time, and she just had faith in me. She liked me. She saw something in me that I wasn't necessarily seeing in myself at the time. And she persuaded Sky to watch my show reel, and they liked me too. Awesome. So they decided that I had the job, and that was that, really. So that was 10 months ago. We had a training weekend in April where I met all the other detectives in London, and we had like a weekend where we went through the rules and regulations of like Ofcom. Obviously, it's important that you adhere to like game show rules. We went through how to sort of do pieces to camera. Sorry, my dog's just climbing up on the sofa now. Say hi.
Folks. Hello.
Yeah, and so in May, they revealed the location at the very last minute, because there wasn't to be any spoilers or anyone sort of finding out any information that they shouldn't. And we went off up to Thirsk in Yorkshire and filmed for 3 weeks, and it was an absolute whirlwind. I could never ever have predicted how hard it was going to be. Still not as hard as parenting full time, I might add. How hard it was going to be, but how much I was going to love it and would make friends who I hopefully will have for life.
Yeah, amazing. So cool. And you were away for, what was it, 2 weeks? Just over 2 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks. Which in itself was pretty scary, because I'd obviously been managing my husband with his PTSD, which sounds awful, I've been managing him, but essentially I am his life PA. I have to make sure that he eats, he takes his medication, he gets enough sleep, that he remembers what he's got to do, when he's got to do it, what appointments he's got, literally everything, because he doesn't have a short-term memory, which is one of the side effects of PTSD. He has a lot of stress and anxiety and depression that goes alongside that as well. So I have to manage those, and I have to manage it effectively around the children as well, so it's not affecting them too much. Also managing the dog as well, who was, she's only 18 months old and she's an absolute psycho. So there was a lot going on. So I reached out to my mum and my mother-in-law and just said, can you do a week each, please, and go down to Plymouth and help my husband. But I think by week 3 he'd had enough of the mothers, so he started packing. He did really well. He did actually a lot better than I was expecting him to, and they even ate dinners every night. If I'm left to my own devices with the kids, they get microwave meals because I do not cook. So it was fine. They didn't turn themselves down, and I worked away for 3 weeks, and it was I did it as much for the fact that I'd lost my income and I needed to start bringing an income back into the house. So for practical reasons, but also for my own mental health, to feel like I was going away, I was achieving something that was just for me, and I was finding my feet again outside of these four walls. And
Right.
reminding myself that I'm a good investigator, and I'm an all right person. People like being around me.
Uh, do you know, I just want to interject there, again, going back to what it's like to be a military wife, that you do, we get called dependents, and that kind of is a sucker punch in itself. And then you have to follow your husband around, you lose your identity, your career stops when you start moving around with your husband, and yeah, you lose your identity, and you suddenly, the idea of having some time to yourself, especially when you've got children as well, the idea of having some time to yourself to actually achieve something and be around people that can give you feedback, you know, because when you go into work every day, you've got constant feedback on what you're doing, and it makes you feel like you're doing a good job, or, you know, if you're not doing a good job. But when you're on your own, it's like radio silence. You don't know, you're like second guessing yourself all the time around parenting, but also with if you aren't parenting, as I wasn't when I first got married, you just feel so sort of like, well, what's my purpose? Why do I exist? So I totally get why, A, obviously you wanted to bring some money into the family unit, but B, to actually achieve something for yourself again and have that reassurance that you aren't going gaga, and that you are a useful human being. I totally get that.
And I've worked. I mean, I got my first job when I was 12, working serving chips and gravy in a cafe. That was my job over a summer when I was 12. And I've always worked. I've never, ever, ever been unemployed. Not that there's anything wrong with unemployment. It does happen. It's very real. But I have always managed to find a job. And so for the first time in my life, I wasn't working. And essentially my job was being a parent and being a housewife. I hate that terminology, but being, you know, a house person. So I wanted physically to get back out there. I mean, I've been a lot fitter than I am now, and a lot, you know, and a lot trimmer than I am now. Because when you're at home, I literally eat the scraps that the kids leave behind. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have anyone to look after the kids. My husband's still away a lot because he does a lot of like recuperation and sort of going away on trips and stuff. So I'm still on my own a lot, and I can't go to the gym of an evening. My youngest only goes to goes to a childminder 2 half days a week, and on those 2 half days, it's housework, it's sorting the dog out and the cats and the spiders and, you know, various other pets, and shopping, and, you know, catching up on all my emails. And in between all of that, we actually set up our own business, as you know. My husband's got a qualification to fly drones, so we turned that into we, you know, went to the Civil Aviation Authority and got permission for commercial operations and set up our own drone company. That's then led into videography. So I'm running the business side of that from home, networking, making connections with people, getting work, running the account side of things, the legality side of things, marketing and managing on social media. I don't have any training in any of that. I just do it.
Yeah.
And luckily doing it successfully at the moment, because obviously I like talking. I'm doing a lot of it now. And that's been a bonus because I'm making great connections, but I fit all of that into a 24-hour day. And there isn't any other time for being physical. So to actually go up to Yorkshire and be running around in the countryside chasing criminals, the robbers, it was so much fun. We were working 13-hour days. We were eating by the roadside. Sometimes I didn't know where my next wee stop would be, and I'd have to ask people if I could use their toilet, or, you know, knock on a pub just before they opened at 11 and say, you know, I know you're not open yet, please can I use your toilet? There was a bit of squatting in bushes. I've never been shy of that, so that's fun. It was just great to be back out and, you know, be physically doing a job, and especially a job that I love.
Yeah, sure. Fantastic. What was your highlight? What's when you, I know that have you binge watched the box set? Am I right in thinking you've watched it?
Yeah. So last night, we watched the premiere a week ago Sunday with the production crew, the head of entertainments from Sky, and one of the program commissioners, and everyone from Shine TV. So we all got together with the cops and the robbers. It was fantastic to see everyone again, and it was incredible. We sat in the cinema at Thirsk, which is a really old-fashioned cinema. Silk curtains that they had to roll up. And we watched the first episode together, and there was lots of booing and hissing at one another. It's hilarious. And it's the first time a lot of us have seen each other again, and it was the first time that we, as the cops side, the investigators, or as we're called, the crack team of detectives on the show, it's the first time we actually got to see what was going on the other side. So there was a lot of gaps that were being filled in. It was great. So we all watched the first episode, but everything was so heightened. The come down from that this week is that I had to rewatch episode 1. I noticed so much more about it because I just hadn't taken it all on board. So last night I binge watched episodes 1, 2, and 3. But halfway through that, I watched episode 1 live again.
Right.
So I've seen episode 1 3 times, and it's still amazing. And then I went on Twitter so that I could answer people's questions, interact with people, because it's had some great advertising. Sky are really good at their PR. So people are interested, even if it's just to moan and troll. You get, haters are always going to hate, so whatever. But it was great.
Sorry to interrupt. I think you've done a good job if you've got people criticising you. That's a good sign, I think. If it's drawing the attention of everybody, including mean people, it's a good sign.
Exactly. And I feel sorry for people like that, to be honest.
Pardon?
I feel really sorry for people that are filled with so much hate that they feel that they've actually got to make the effort to type in negativity into the world and put it out there.
Well, do you know what, honey? I don't think. What I think it is that they haven't got enough positive going on in their life. I think people that are doing really well are so busy doing well and enjoying life that they haven't got time to do that kind of stuff. It's people that aren't making progress in their life that have got time to be mean, and it's only because people's actions are generally a reflection of them internally. So any negative you get, just think, well, that's that person, that's their problem. It's not actually really a comment about you. It's a revelation about them. So I shouldn't worry about any trolly people.
I'm really active on social media. Especially the amount of time I stay at home every evening. I've got children in bed asleep. I can't go out and socialise. So almost being on social media is my social life. I'm also really interested in, conservation, the ocean. I have got things planned in terms of adventures. I would say mini adventures, but one of them's quite epic coming up next year. So I spend a lot of time researching, speaking to people on social media that are interested in the same things as me. And when you do that, I think we've talked about it before, you get stuck in one tweet and then it ravels into lots of other things, and before you know it, you're looking at pictures of donkeys laughing or something.
This definitely happens to me. I'm no good at Twitter, everyone. I put it out there on Twitter because I know I should, but I just don't understand the whole threads and linking them back. So I'm going to rewind a little bit, because I was going to ask you what your favourite part of the heist was, but I'm bearing in mind that there are going to be people that haven't watched as much as you have. So there's no
way I'm giving any spoilers. No way. Everyone's got to watch it.
Tell me what your favourite bit is from the filming, like as in when you were doing it. What was the best part?
Absolutely, hands down, the best bit for me, and from what all the other detectives have said, unless they're lying, the relationships that we built.
Making friends.
I had an incredible partner in Craig. He was fantastic. He's the only one of us that is still currently serving. He is an amazing police officer, and I'm privileged to have been partnered with him. Also hilarious. The intel analysts are incredible. Ollie, Macca and Paula just blew me away, and they are funny, they are personable, you know, they are witty, they're just great. You know, Sue and Ray, they've got and Keely, the bosses, they've got so much policing experience with them and between them. They've got so much for me to admire and look up to. But I was just in awe of them. But on top of that, they're just great people. They've got so much life experience and policing experience between them. I'm kind of just blown away by them. That's how I felt about everybody, even the production. I mean, I was really lucky. We had a great sound man, we had a great production runner. Hi Milosh, hi Kate, if you ever watch this. And our two cameramen, Jamie and Tom. Jamie's a great producer director. Tom's a great cameraman, and they're just so funny. We spent hours and hours together, sometimes holed up in bushes or hiding behind wheelie bins, or, you know, in a car in the middle of nowhere, getting completely lost. And most people would have wanted to cry at the point where, you know, I needed to go to the toilet and there was no toilet, and you're like, you have to learn to have good banter with these people because you spend so much time with them. But I've come away from it with the most incredible bunch of friends.
Oh.
You know, it is. What someone described this earlier. I think you're due to speak to Dave Bolton, whose story would blow everybody away. But he described us on Twitter this morning as a dysfunctional family, and we really are. They are now family. They are incredibly dysfunctional. Jane, the crime scene manager, makes me laugh so that my belly hurts and I need to pee. And I know that if I've got a problem, I can pick up the phone to one of the girls. If I need to laugh, I'll call Jane. You know, if I need some advice on you know, some phys advice, I'll call Dave. If I need someone just to take the piss out of, I'll call Macca. Sorry, I just swore, I didn't mean to, but
okay.
You know, they're just great people. And I'm ranting again now, but you can tell how passionate I am about these people. They're fantastic, and I hope they will be in my life forever. Hopefully we'll get recommissioned for another series and they'll want us to do it.
Yeah, and is that quite so how does that happen? How will we know when there's going to be another series, if there's going to be? Okay, so I guess it must be on.
This is not even me hiding a spoiler. I genuinely have no idea.
So I'm imagining that they must just get like their viewing figures together and feedback from social media, and that would be okay. Yeah, this has gone down well. Let's make another series.
So basically, everyone that watches this needs to watch the Heist, give some incredible feedback, and that will help me pay the bills and feed my children.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You need to watch the Heist, everyone, otherwise Alecia doesn't eat.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I just want to go back a little bit again to being a military wife, and you know, when I say that, I don't want to say it as it is part of our identities, but it's not us 100%. You know, there's like you've got your policing, you've got the Heist, you've got all these other qualities and talents about you, but sometimes the whole being a military wife thing is quite a leading description. Now I know that you're doing a lot of charity work behind the scenes as well, mainly due to families being underrepresented by, when you think of all the myriad of military charities that are out there to help veterans and also serving guys and girls, quite often, as you haven't alluded to it, but you've mentioned about your husband going away on rehab type trips. You're still the one that gets left at home holding the babies, and this is something that you've obviously recognised as an issue. I'm going to stop talking and let you tell the viewers more about that.
So when my husband had his breakdown, I was really lucky in terms of our location. I knew of an organisation called Rock to Recovery, which was founded by Jamie Sanderson, who's an ex-Royal Marine or former Royal Marine, and Jason Fox, who's on SAS, Who Dares Wins. They're friends. They started Rock to Recovery. I was aware of Rock Recovery, and I reached out to Jamie at 1 o'clock in the morning and said, help me, because I didn't know how to get hold of my husband's work, who to call, who to ask for advice, where to go and what to do. Because for years and years and years, stereotypically, and I can't speak for Army or even Navy or RAF, this is talking mainly about Royal Marines because that's where my knowledge is based in terms of being a military partner. They say, if every time there's a problem, don't go to welfare, I'll lose my job. Don't tell anyone, I'll lose my job. You don't want to be one of those people that always goes to welfare. So they drill it into you time and time again. Don't contact anyone at my work to tell them that my behaviour is horrific. Until it gets to the point where, on the night of my husband's breakdown, I had complete strangers messaging me, telling me about what he was doing, and telling me that I needed to come and get him, or he was going to come to serious harm. I won't go into that too much because that's kind of his story to tell.
Sure.
But our relationship has been incredibly difficult because of what he's gone through. But you're never one of those people that is reluctant to help somebody. So as much as you can feel that passion of thinking, God, I hate you for what you're putting me through, I would never ever turn on somebody and not help them, especially him. You know, I made promises to him to look after him, and that's what I intended to do. I didn't know where to go, so I reached out to a charity instead of his employer, which in the first instance I find quite sad. I did, however, send an email to welfare, and the next morning they did call me and they said, come on in, bring him with you. That in itself was an issue because I was 7 months pregnant at the time. I was on crutches with SPD. I had a 3-year-old at home. I had my eldest child. We had one vehicle between us. You know, it was just a nightmare. So actually, if I drilled down into the details, which I don't want to do with regards to the whole thing, but if I drill down into the details, given what I just told them and the content, content of my email and the things that had happened the night before and things leading up to that incident, somebody shouldn't have been at my house at 7 o'clock in the morning. They should have been asking me to put him in a car and take him in. But that's by the by. I managed to get him in with the help of my fantastic ex-neighbours, that sounds awful, I moved away, and then they subsequently moved away. They were brilliant at the time, they saw me through it, they took my kids in, and I managed to get him into work. If he's admitted himself, if I hadn't taken him that morning, he wouldn't have gone, he'd have gone back into denial. We probably would be divorced by now because his behaviour just couldn't have continued that way, or in his own words, he'd be dead. So that's how serious it was. And they offered a doctor's appointment that afternoon, and I said no, that's not good enough. If I walk out of here and leave him here, he's going to go and kill himself. We need to see a doctor now. There was no one to take us, so I then had to walk my husband from welfare on camp to the doctor's office and sit outside with him to make sure that he went in. Beyond that, which I've said I won't tell his story, so I won't want to go into it too much, but beyond that, the most that welfare could do for me was to Google who could help me, and they gave me the telephone number for the Exmouth Children's Centre, and that is all the information I got. I didn't get any information on PTSD. At that point, he hadn't had a formal diagnosis. I didn't get any information on how to tell my children what was going on. I got nothing. I didn't get any crisis contact phone numbers apart from the phone number of the welfare officer, who I actually ended up having to converse with him via email so that I had an audit trail for everything that was going wrong.
Right.
So because of that experience and because of their lack of knowledge on how to help a partner with or without children in that situation, I just started gathering information. Every time I went somewhere and I found something out, I spoke to people. I found out about charities that can help. For example, the Ripple Pond, which is a charity for partners of people with PTSD. So I started forming relationships with them. I joined the Ripple Pond. I made sure that I could signpost other wives to the Ripple Pond. Help for Heroes Band of Sisters, which is for the wives of service personnel. There is a band of brothers as well, but the band of sisters for the wives of service personnel who are wounded, sick and injured in any form. So I joined them as well, and started gathering more and more information. I knew of other wives that were going through, had been through, or were about to go through what had happened and was happening to me. So as a result of that, I started a group on Facebook with another good friend of ours, Helen Chauffeur, whose husband also has PTSD. And we started gaining momentum. We got more members. But unfortunately, the group was linked to another group that felt that we weren't qualified to give people advice on PTSD.
Right.
That's not what we were ever there to do. We were there to offer a peer support network and signpost other women based on our experience. So we started again, and I'm still jumping over these hurdles on a daily basis, but I'm finally getting somewhere, and I'm hoping that part of me gaining a bit of a public profile, it will give me a platform to speak out on this matter. And it's really difficult. Sorry, I'm digressing again. But it's really difficult as a woman to sound assertive without men calling you aggressive.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult. I was called aggressive by my son's deputy headmaster the other day because he said something to me that was incorrect, and when I corrected him, he said, "You're being aggressive now." And I actually had to say to him, "I'm not being aggressive. I'm being assertive."
Yeah, I got described. I know exactly what you're saying. I was just being assertive, and I got described as steely. Well, steely seems a little bit more palatable than aggressive, but it's still sort of it still seems a negative thing to be called.
Yeah.
You know, when actually you're just
Karen
standing
Brady from Dragon's Den is currently doing some kind of, it's similar to what you're doing, but it's very much sort of feminism based, and she does a great talk about being assertive as a woman. So anyone that's watching, I'd urge you to go and have a look at Karen Brady and watch her video about women being assertive. It's really good.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so going back to that, everyone that I deal with, the military is really archaic. I'm not knocking their system. I have the utmost respect for the MOD, for the military. I'm a staunch military supporter. I will do absolutely everything I can to help currently serving and veterans. My brother's a veteran from the British Army. My grandmother was in the Land Army. I know it's slightly different, Women's Land Army. You know, I've got military background with family members. And I love the military and everything it stands for, especially at this time. You know, it's Remembrance Weekend, and my husband's breakdown was on Remembrance Day 2 years ago. But things need to change. Some of their systems are really archaic, and they can't help. It's the same as the police. You've become institutional. There is institutional sexism throughout the police. There is institutional sexism throughout the MOD. And times are changing.
Yeah.
But some of the people involved in that don't see it for themselves. They don't see what they're doing. They don't see that what they're saying or what they're doing or how they're treating people is insincere, or not. They don't have any empathy. They can't understand what we're going through.
Well, I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head saying about it being archaic and so deeply ingrained into the psyche of some people, maybe the older generation, I'm going to just say it, the older members of the MOD and that kind of thing, that have just sort of, lived and breathed a certain way for so long that it's hard for them to adapt. And I do feel with everything that the young royals are doing around mental health that this is starting to change, but well done, huh? I do feel like slowly but surely it's all changing, but it is a slow process, because like you say, these institutions, they're massive institutions of archaic ways of doing things. It's going to take a little while at the best of times. So yeah, I do feel
to
like...
cut a long story short, Helen and I run this Facebook group for partners of Royal Marines or Army Commandos. So we are extending out to Commandos as well. Whether they are married or not married, whether they have children or they don't have children, that doesn't matter. What matters is that we are reaching out to them and saying, here is a list of places that you can go for help, and we're providing them with that one piece of paper that was never provided to me.
Yeah.
You know, got everyone from here's the number of the Samaritans to the big white wall to the NHS links within each sort of local area for their crisis teams, who to call if your children are struggling, who to go to for crisis loans if you're short of money because of your situation. There's also girls on there who aren't currently with their husbands or partners, but they've got children together, so they still know how to keep that relationship. They still need to know how to keep that relationship going so that they can parent together.
Yeah.
You know, there's women in the group who are aware that, and this is a touchy subject because this is one that the blokes don't really know how to get their heads around, but there are women in our group that are aware that their partners have mental health issues, but they just haven't recognised it for themselves yet. So they're displaying some of the key, I hate to say side effects, but the key signs and symptoms of PTSD, like poor sleep hygiene, drinking too much, and behaving a certain way. There's kind of a follow-on to that with the alcohol abuse, the aggression, the hyperarousal, you know, the kind of the weird response to stimuli, not liking to go to fireworks, not liking loud bangs, you know, all of these. There's a whole list of things that are kind of obvious if you think about it, and these girls are noticing this, and they're dealing with, to a degree, sometimes verbal aggression, sometimes physical aggression, and they don't know what to do because of that thing that I said, where they're told by their partner, don't call welfare or lose my job, don't call welfare or lose my job. So we're not there to tell people what to do, we're not there to tell people to get their partners into trouble. All we are doing is providing a listening service, somewhere that they can write down their thoughts and their feelings and get their emotions out. And sometimes that really helps, just to write it down and have people go, it's okay, hun, we're here to listen, or don't worry, I went through this 2 years ago, everything's going to be okay, to girls that just are on the group and never ever post, but they now have access to those vital telephone numbers and email addresses of people that can help them in a time of crisis. Hidden Wounds, that are a part of Help for Heroes, are a counselling service, and there is currently no official counselling service for partners, and you can actually end up with secondary PTSD as a result of living with somebody with PTSD. It's a big black hole that we won't go down now, but to live with somebody who constantly is in that state, it can rub off on you, and it does rub off on you, and you do need help with your own mental health as a result. You have to jump through hoops to get that help for yourself and your children. The amount of paperwork you have to fill out is unreal. You don't feel like you have the strength, the power, or the energy to keep going to these people and saying, will you help me? Especially if your partner isn't open to it. So what Helen and I are trying to do, obviously with your help and the help of Kirsty, our other ambassador, is to provide some kind of service for those people, some kind of service for their kids. We want to be able to say, look, we've got a pot of money, let's all go camping for the weekend. There is something really special about being out in nature, even if it's hoying it down outside and you're getting soaking wet right through to the skin. There is something really special about being outside, about walking, about being by the sea, about feeling the wind and the elements on your face, about sitting around a bonfire with somebody playing with the guitar, stuffing your face full of marshmallows, you know, hot chocolate or a beer or whatever floats your boat. We need to create that for these women because their partners are away a lot. They are under pressure of looking after children. A lot of them are still working full time as well, and they're just not getting away. And when there is downtime, that downtime usually involves the partner because it'll be a date weekend or let's go and visit the family. They are never ever getting a chance to just be themselves.
Yeah.
So we want to become a charitable organisation. We want to get a pot of money together for these girls to go out and either have direct access to counselling for themselves and for their children, to have direct access to the literature, especially for their children, so they can read why dad is upset or angry or isn't around so much. We want money in a pot for them to just go and have a weekend where they can go and, you know, go on a guided walk, do some adventure, and just be themselves and not have to worry about childcare. You know, if we can provide a little bit more money so that they can pay for somebody to look after their kids for a night, brilliant. Yeah. So that's the aim, really. I've rattled on about it for ages now, but
no, I think you've explained it really well. Actually, I think it's worth rattling on about it because I think the military. I mean, I know that the military wife profile has been raised a lot, obviously with the military wives choir, but the military wife, to understand the military wife and what it actually really means to live with someone that is going through the struggles of mental health when you've got your own mental health to deal with, because we're put in such unusual circumstances, sent around the country away from friends and family and support networks with people that need the most support, you know, and reflecting back on the archaic system that they are institutionalized into and then spat out the other end a lot of the time. I think it's phenomenal work that you and Helen are doing, and I'm really proud to be part of that as well and support you with that. So thank you for letting me do that with you. Is there anything else that you want to say to our lovely viewers before we wrap things up?
I think it's something that we've said quite a lot to each other before. When we are getting frustrated with it, when things aren't going our way, no one else is going to paddle your canoe for you. You're going to have to do it yourself. And I often, I'm not like this wonderful person that's like really, really positive all the time. I'm really not. My outlet is you. Since you've been coaching me in a professional capacity, things have been much better for me. So I can only thank you for that, and obviously highly recommend you as a personal coach as well, because it's worked for me. It really has.
I'll pay you later.
So don't be afraid to seek help would be one of the things that I would say. Don't be afraid to speak out and speak your truth, because that's really, really important. And speak the truth for other people who can't speak it for themselves, like your children. Don't be afraid to be assertive, and if someone calls you aggressive, tell them to poke it. And don't be afraid to paddle your own canoe, because no one else is going to get in there and do it for you 24/7. You have to do it for yourself, and you are going to feel sorry for yourself, and you are going to have times where you want to sit on your sofa, you know, with a tea and a whole packet of digestives, and you're going to want to scoff a lot and watch some reality TV and do absolutely nothing, and that's okay. You're allowed those days. You're just not allowed those days every day, because life is passing you by if you have too many of those days. Get outside. Have a look at the Ordnance Survey. They've got a project called Get Outside. At the minute, it's spend an hour outside a day for the entire month of November. There is something incredible about being outside that lifts your spirits, even when it's a miserable day. Get outside, read, listen to music, listen to podcasts. Educating yourself is free. There is so much out there in terms of resources that you have access to for free. that will lift your spirits. Listen to a podcast that's, you know, going to give you some kind of oomph to go out and want to do something special. And if there's anyone out there listening to this that has struggled with anything that I've mentioned, like bullying at school, bullying in the workplace, miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, mental health, living with a partner with mental health, caring for a sick child or an elderly relative, all of those things I have experience in, I am more than happy to listen to anybody, because having someone to listen to you enables you to offload, and offloading is the beginning of making things better. So if anyone has any questions surrounding that, I think you're going to post the links to my social media account.
I will, yeah.
I'm also working on building my own website at the moment. I don't know where my career is going from here, but I really enjoyed working in television. I love interviewing. I'm interested in journalism. I want to write my own book. I want to write a children's book. There's so many ideas that I have. I don't know where to start, and I've already said I don't have the time for my own life, so I don't know how I'm going to fit it all in, but I will. But I rarely say no to people, because I love helping people, and that's the basis of all of this. So if I can't help somebody, I'm usually pretty good at finding out where they can get the help.
Awesome. That's really cool. So I will definitely post links to your social media. I totally agree with what you were saying about taking control and paddling your own canoe. I think that's really, really important. I still think it's important to ask for help. When I don't think, you know, you should just be on your own little mission and not ask for help if you need help. That's really important to ask for help. What was it Grandpa used to say? Don't deny people the gift of giving, because there are people out there that will want to help you. But at the end of the day, it is so empowering just to take responsibility. Ask for help, but don't 100% rely on help. Take it when you can get it, but don't 100% rely on it. You have to be focused. You have to, you know, better yourself, like Alecia said, listen to the podcast, read books, look for help when you can, that kind of stuff. I'm ranting and going off on a sidetrack, but yeah, I'm excited. I didn't know about the ordnance survey thing. That's very cool. And yeah, my only other caveat would be, because I know Alecia and she is very keen to help everyone, that you also need to look after your own energy as well, your own mental energy, because when you are someone that gives, you can sometimes be not taken advantage of, but people look to you for help and support. But make sure you carve out that time for yourself, and especially if you are someone that has got a partner that's suffering, you need to create a little bit of space, just to, I don't know, even if it's just drinking a cup of tea in peace and quiet, and just having a few minutes to breathe and think about yourself.
A whole cup of tea that's hot, that you get to drink from beginning to end, with no floaty bits of biscuit, kid spit, bits of banana. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's the little things that count though, isn't it? It really is the little things that count. Right, I think we have covered a lot in this video.
We have.
Cool. Well, I'm going to round it up then. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it.
And the next time we do one of these, I'm going to interview you, so that everyone can hear your story, because you're fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I'll pay you for that as well. Cool. Right, if you like this video, do please hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll get notifications when new videos are uploaded. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. If you search at Be Glad Movement, you should be able to find us. Oh, and recently we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. So actually you can go to youtube.com/c/Be Glad, and you'll get all the videos that have been collected so far. I'd love to see you there. Thank you for joining us. Did I say this bit? If you've got a story that you want to share, please do get in touch. It's really important, because I do feel that your story in your voice has the ability to help someone in their time of need. Doesn't matter if it's similar to someone else's story. Even if it is similar to someone else's story, your story in your voice will resonate with someone in their time of need. Okay, so please do get in touch, especially because I need to hit my target of 100 stories by the end of the year. And the thing that I always forget to mention, and I know this is making it a really, really long sign off, but the thing that I always forget to mention is that I am actually trying to raise money for the Samaritans and Action for Happiness. This is I'm not throwing myself off a cliff or doing a bake sale or running a marathon. This is my challenge, is collecting these 100 stories. So if you like this video and you've got some pennies to donate, I would absolutely love for you to donate. You can find it on the donate button on the Be Glad website. I'll share it in the links below as well, but it's BT My Donate, and it's the Be Glad movement. Cool, I think I've said enough. Thanks, Alecia, thank you for joining us. And we will see you in another episode. Many thanks, bye bye.